Wayne, during our time together, I want to focus on your work with victims of crime.
Okay.
Because that's a unique niche. Now, you don't do only victims of crime. You don't only see victims of crime, but you've had plenty of victims of crime in your practice, correct?
Yes, I have.
So I want to talk about different aspects of how victims of crime can live fulfilling lives even when they face such a potentially debilitating experience or experiences for many victims of crime. But first, what are some of the crimes that you have heard about in your office when clients come for therapeutic purposes?
Well, I started out with my practice, as a raw intern, seeing people at a church. And I started working with children who were in blended family situations and with the parents, realizing, of course, that probably most of the problems with the parents and the children is the parents, not the child, But anyway, we got these children. And it began to be evident that there was something going on with some of these families that were more than just anxiety producing for these children. Not just the fact they've got a new stepdad or something like that that's going on. Something else is going on. And so as I moved into a real internship after I did my undergrad and my master's degree, and as I began to look at all of that whatever was happening with these children, I began to realize there's something really deadly within their psyche. And I began to try to chase those things down. And it was amazing how many times these really, really anxious children had been molested as children. And it's heartbreaking. And of course, about that time in my relationship with my wife, she suddenly came to the realization that she had been molested. And it wasn't something she didn't know, but it was something that was not in her conscience. And while I'm doing my work and trying to find out who I am in this new world of psychology, she's off trying to find herself. And she actually quit coming home. And I said, people would be mad at her for not being where she was supposed to be, and I'd say, you leave her alone. She's in process, and when she's through with the process, we'll see whether we still have a marriage or not. But she finally said to me, she said, I hear you protecting me, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And I think if you'll stay, you'll get better than you ever thought possible. And she made the last 15 of our years of our lives, or 20 years of our lives, absolute, just wonderful, stuff like that. Because she did exactly that. She made up for those 3 years that she was really struggling with her own life, stuff like that.
What were some of the symptoms of the abuse becoming real in her psyche that you saw? I mean, you said she stopped coming home. Mm-hmm. What were other things that started to occur?
She began to really kind of be a child again. She was really living out the lost adolescence that she had lost due to this crime against her, and so that's kind of what it was. So and an increased amount of anxiety. You could, if I were to come anywhere near her, she would get really, really, really upset. If I would touch her, for instance, it was like you could lose your life. And even if it was just a loving pat, you just didn't do that. And
in our world, we call that a trigger.
A trigger.
So can you define what a trigger is so people can start to understand the various triggers various victims of crime, not only victims of sexual assault, but people might experience? Can you first define them and then give some examples?
Yeah, well, let's see. A definition of a trigger is anything that comes along that reminds the person either consciously or unconsciously of the thing that had happened to them, whenever that happened. That reminds them, and it actually, victims of crime sometimes dissociate. They live in a world sometimes in their own head that there's not conscience, that there's no consciousness of it. And so something will happen and bang, there'll be a trigger. And they will be reminded of this thing that had happened to them, sometimes as a child, sometimes even pre-verbal as a child.
And I want to play off of this because you talk about victims of crime, which some people don't appreciate that term. They'd rather say survivor of crime. Mm-hmm. I use them interchangeably because I was a victim of crime.
That's right.
And I personally don't enjoy the term survivor because I so deeply want to do so much more than survive.
That's right.
And so I use them interchangeably, and I don't mean to offend anyone with terminology, but if we ignore the fact we are victims, we really can't have an imprint on making life safer or healthier.
Yeah. I think victim has really taken on a whole new meaning in this woke society that we're in right now, things like that. So that is a problem using that word. But I use that word because for every victim, there's a perpetrator. And and that's really the hard part about crime. There's all kinds of things that we can feel victimized by.
Absolutely.
Loss of a beloved one. My dog ran away. I've bankrupted. I've lost my job. I had a car accident and stuff like that. And there's in any one of those things, there is a similar amount of anxiety that's produced, but there's no perpetrator involved really. There's no one out there that's doing something to you it's this whole sense of the loss of control, that these people who have been victimized are experiencing. Something happened I had no control over, and it could be simply, not simply, but it could be somebody breaks into your house and goes through your stuff, and you go home and find that all your underwear drawer and your jewelry is missing, and everything is all on the floor and stuff like that, and you feel victimized, and you can't even identify the perpetrator in this case, but there is one.
Right.
Stuff like
And
that.
that sense of violation.
Violation, and then the loss of safety, and that's what happens. So when something happens, say in childhood, and now I have a 30-year-old woman in my practice who has had something else happen. It might even be a term that the husband used with her, or a friend, it said something to her and stuff like that. And suddenly she's no longer this grown-up person that's dealing with these issues and dealing with her anxieties and trying to get along with life and stuff like that. She now is driven back into this business of being a small child. And she's experiencing, again, that thing, which we call post-traumatic stress disorder, stuff like that. And some of those things have great delay in them, like my wife's. She knew that there were things she didn't like, but she did not react to them quite the same way as she did when she suddenly realized I was a victim of molestation. Somebody took away my sense of safety. They entered into my space, and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't make them not do that.
And you talked about that she dissociated, and many victims of crime dissociate. And really, it's a coping strategy.
Totally.
Which was what was safe for us when we were experiencing that victimization.
Exactly.
I know for myself, being a former victim of sexual assault for many years, when it became public, I couldn't share the details of the actual abuse.
Exactly.
Because I dissociated. I went elsewhere. I didn't want to be present in that trauma. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to feel the pain, whether it was emotional or physical. So I dissociated. I went elsewhere in my psyche, and I took in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you great details of the room as I'm talking to you right now. It's as if I'm sitting there as a 7-year-old little girl.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's our safe space.
Yeah, that's right. It becomes a safety mechanism to go to and to hide out in. I've had one woman who said when her grandfather would come into the room when she was 8 years old, she would go become a 15-year-old boy and go climb up in a tree that was down by the creek near their farm and stay there until he was gone. Because boys don't get molested. Well, that's wrong, but in her
mind.
Adolescent mind, or in her pre-adolescent mind, that was what happened. And so she was safe in that tree until it was over, and something like that.
Yes, and you talk about triggers, and they aren't only touch.
That's right.
It can be sight, smell, taste, and that just put up your guard and make you feel unsafe.
And it could be a loud noise. It could be people fighting next door reminds you of how your alcoholic father would beat your mother and stuff like that, and come into you and hurt the other kids and stuff. And there's no way to stop that from happening because you're a little kid and stuff like that. I think those are crimes too, by the way.
Absolutely.
I really do.
Absolutely.
I don't think it has to be overtly criminal. When a father is terrorizing, or a mother even is terrorizing a small child, I think that's criminal.
Absolutely.
It just drives me nuts when that happens.
Right.
And stuff like that.
And what are coping strategies that, first of all, unhealthy coping strategies people put into place to deal with their triggers or memories, or being stuck, like their perpetrator is not facing criminal consequences?
Absolutely not.
What are some of those unhealthy coping strategies? And then what are healthy coping strategies?
Well, the unhealthy coping strategies are things like we said. These are, some of them are unintentional. So when the little girl goes to the tree and hides out, and it becomes a boy and hides out there, that's a coping strategy. It's a neurotic kind of response to what's going on. There are psychotics and neurotics and normals and so forth and so on. And the neurotic is somebody who has one or more coping strategies that don't work anymore, but you continue to use them. Stuff like that.
It's the hamster on the wheel.
That's
going
right.
round and round.
Just going to do it over and over and over again when it no longer works, and that's neurotic. So. In fact, the saying that crazy is being, doing the same thing over and over. Psychotic is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. That's not psychosis. Psychosis doesn't operate that way. Neurosis does. It's neurotic. So these people are helplessly caught up in that circle of experiences and behaviors that just don't work anymore.
And I want people to understand that when you use the phrase neurotic, it's not a slam.
No.
It's not meant to put them down.
No, it's meant. It is, neuroses is something that we do so that we don't feel the pain, and we don't feel so afraid and stuff like that. So what are neuroses? Freud had a bunch of them, right? They call them denial and repression, regression, and those kinds of things, and dissociation is one.
Absolutely,
it is. It's stuff like that. But we just pretend like it didn't happen. Well, I'll just pretend like it didn't happen. No. And I've seen people come in and they say, one young man said, no, nothing ever happened to me like that. No. I was 7 years old, and I have an 11-year-old or 13-year-old cousin, that did things to me, but it doesn't bother me anymore. Just denial that this was something that really terrible. Now, is it my job to make him feel the pain of that?
Yes.
No. But he's acting out the pain of that. He's failing at school. He doesn't have any friends. He's questioning his gender, his sexuality. He's angry. He's lashing out. All those kinds of behaviors are also coping strategies.
Right.
Rather than being afraid and sad, I'll be angry and rageful. Why? Because anger and rage are more powerful feelings than being sad and being helpless. So instead, what I'll do is I'll be big and strong and I'll bully, stuff like that. I'll hit you. That's stronger than saying I'll cower in the corner while you abuse me, stuff like that. And all that displaced anger that should have been perpetrated against, brought against somebody who hurt them, they don't. They bottle it up, and it becomes them inside. And it becomes them. It becomes a description of them. Who are you? I'm an angry person. I'm angry,
Get over it.
Get over it. Yeah, that's just who I am. That's my feeling. In fact, my wife always said she had a whole cornucopia of feelings that she had available to her, and she'd say, well, how do you feel about this or that? And I'd say, well, wait a minute, I'm not angry and I'm not guilty. Those are the two feelings I was allowed as a kid. If I'm not angry and I'm not guilty, then I have another feeling I don't know. I don't know what it is. I said, I guess I'm confused. And she says, you're never confused about anything. I said, well, I'm confused about this. He says, no, you're not confused. You just don't have a name for it. She was right. What was I feeling? I was feeling hurt. But you think I was going to let her know I felt hurt? Never. I was going to be angry. That would cause her to stop doing that, stuff like
And
that.
because isn't that how your dad responded to anything that didn't fit his control patterns.
And thinking, well, my dad was he was like say he was Texas tough. I'll tell you what, he was not a really big guy, but boy, you mess with him and he hurt you. And I'd seen that happen since I was a little kid, and I was really careful around my dad. Yeah, stuff like that. And my mother was, bless her heart, just a tad airheaded. No.
Naivete was her coping strategy.
That was her coping strategy, yeah. My dad was not scary except when something happened in the world that would threaten the family, or my mom particularly, like that. Then he could be really scary, stuff like that. Yeah, he was a hard man. And, and I understand, psychologically I can look back at his family and say, okay, how about his dad? I don't think I heard his father say 15 words in his whole life. The man was a total stoic. And that was the household that my dad was raised in. He was born in a mud dugout in the Texas Panhandle. Grew up hard. His grandfather was the Marshal of Amarillo, Texas. I mean, these guys were hard people.
And then it comes down to us taking responsibility for what do we want.
Exactly.
And let's dive into that in developing healthy coping strategies.
Helping coping strategies are a thing we learn to do. Just like we learn to do the neurotic behaviors, now we're going to learn to do the healthy behaviors and things like that. What can I do to do that? Well, one of those things I always think of is to be able to, if you can't name it, you can't change it. If you can't identify what's going on, so if we stay, dissociated from it, or if we stay denying it, if we stay separated from it, stuff like that, we'll never, ever do anything with it. But to call it out for what it actually is and to begin to say, because so many people I've seen who have been abused, we talk about sexual molestation, but in all kinds of ways, somehow you begin to feel it was your fault. I did this. Somehow I did this. And I think part of my work is to help people disconnect from that feeling that they have actually perpetrated this upon themselves. That I did this, I caused this, and stuff like that. I had one woman say, after she had been molested as a child, raped as a teenager, and raped again as an adult. She said, I said, 13 years, I said, wow, when you were 8 years old and you were being molested, why do you think that happened? She says, well, some little girls are sexually attractive to some older men. I'm going, where in the world did that come from? I said, so let's imagine. So, and the way I would do that is I'm going to give her a new reality.
Right.
So I say, okay, let's imagine that you got a little boy I know, and you go to the beach with him, and you take him to the bathroom, and you don't go into the men's room with him, but you send him into the bathroom in there. And there's nobody else in there because you checked before he went in. But you didn't know there's another door comes off of the parking lot that goes in there, and a man comes in there and molests him. Because some little boys are sexually attractive to some older men. And she said, I would kill him. That's not his fault. He's a little boy, and stuff like that. And about halfway through that tirade, she went, oh.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
No.
Exactly. No.
And those lies need to be restructured.
Restructured.
And
confronted,
that's one thing
restructured.
I asked them. I said, what is the antithesis to the lie your mom taught you? Not through words, but through actions.
Yeah.
What's the antithesis?
Yeah.
I'm figuring that out. I said, that doesn't work.
Yeah. Does not work.
That if you say, I'm figuring that out, you're staying stuck in that place.
Now
you need to say the antithesis until your brain and your heart catch up to understand the truth.
But you can't take away some coping strategy, though, without replacing it with something. So that's really important part of our work, is to make sure that the person gets something in to replace that thing that they've been using for such a long time. Because if all of a sudden it's in your face and it happened and now you could really drop this person into a very, very depressed place or a very, very anxious place. And so you want to make sure that they've got something to hang on to,
Otherwise, they experience a loss of identity.
That's right.
And they have no idea who they are.
That's right. Well, what happens if I'm not that? Then who am I? If I'm not a victim, then who am I? If I'm not, surviving the thing, it's just surviving. That's all I'm doing is just surviving. Is that the replacement factor here? No, 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 something more than that.
Right, that's vitally important.
And sometimes, I like working with Christians because I can use Christian talk with them. I said, did you ever think of yourself as the beloved child of the King of the universe? Yeah. Brennan Manning, the philosopher, ex-drunk, Catholic priest, said, my name is Brennan Manning and I'm Abba's little boy. To me, that's so powerful to think of
And
yourself.
Abba is Daddy.
Daddy, Papa, God. I'm the Father. I'm the Father's little boy. And that's a really powerful statement, I think. And that's what we try to do, is to give them something that they can replace this victim mentality, this picture of themselves as being the victim of somebody without any power and begin to give them some power. And we have some ways to do that.
And one thing that I say often to clients is, you're perfectly normal for what you went through.
Absolutely.
But now it's time to create a new normal.
A new norm. That's right. That's right. We cannot describe ourselves and live in that old normality. We can't. Otherwise, I tell everybody I'm an addict. Once upon a time, you would have called me an alcoholic. I am not an alcoholic. Why are you not an alcoholic? They say, well, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. No, no, no. No, I haven't had a drink in 40 years. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm an addict. What do you mean about that? I never leave the house without a task to do. I've had that since I was a child, because I was told life is about work, not about fun. And so I'm a workaholic. And I do that. All of my life is filled up with something productive to do and stuff like that. But I'm not an alcoholic. But that doesn't change that I have addictive kind of personality and stuff like that. If you were to take that away from me, I don't know what I'd do. Who am I without that? Without writing poetry and writing on my novels and painting my pictures and all that stuff and going, I've cut back my practice a lot, but without going into the office and without getting that feedback from people that says this has really been helpful, I don't know what I'd have done without this. And I get that from adults who have experienced the pain of some kind of crime against them, and they've just come to this appreciation that they're not described by their pain, not by their crime, not by the thing that happened to them. They have a bigger description, and to help them to see that as how precious that is, for them to see themselves as really, really special.
That's awesome.